We come to the next topic, that is ulcer, sinus and fistula. Ulcer is a break in the epithelial continuity. We all know the definition of ulcer. It can be on the skin or in the mucous membrane. Discontinuity of the skin or mucous membrane, which occurs due to the microscopic death of next one. Etiology can be venous incompetence due to varicose veins or deep vein thrombosis, arterial disease, arteritis due to autoimmune disease, trauma, chronic infection, or neoplastic. Next. There's grading of venous grading of ulcers. Grade 0, pre-ulcerative lesion or a healed ulcer. Grade 1 is a very superficial ulcer. Grade 2 is ulcer deeper to subcutaneous tissue, exposing soft tissue or bone. Grade 3 is abscess formation or osteomyelitis, which we see sometimes in diabetic foot. Grade 4 is gangrene of part of tissues, limb or foot. And grade 5 is gangrene of the entire one area, like of the foot. Next. The classification is clinical and pathological. Clinical, it can be a spreading ulcer. The edge is inflamed and edematous. Healing ulcer, edge is sloping with healthy red granulation tissue and serous discharge. Callus, the floor contains pale, unhealthy granulation tissue with indurated edge. This is the clinical types of ulcers. Next one. Pathological, they may be non-specific, they may be due to specific infection, or they may be malignant ulcers. Next. Non-specific, it can be due to trauma, arterial problems, venous problem, microangiopathy as we see in diabetes, neurogenic ulcer due to neuropathies, and infective ulcers. Next. Non-specific continued, what we call as diabetic ulcer. In diabetes, there are 3 factors at work. One is microangiopathy, one is neuropathy, and third one is increased sugar in the tissues. Tropical ulcers, creopathic ulcers, Martorell's and Bazin's ulcer. Next. Traumatic may be due to mechanical, like you have a dental ulcer on the tongue. It can be physical due to an electrical burn, or chemical due to application of caustics. They are acute, superficial, and very tender. Arterial ulcer is usually due to peripheral vascular disease, atherosclerosis, and thromboangiitis obliterans, which is due to generally smoking. You get it due to cervical rib. Cervical rib is an extra rib which is present, which develops from the 7th cervical vertebrae. Normally, we have 7 cervical vertebrae and 8 cervical segments. And also because of Raynaud's disease. Chief complaint, there is severe pain in the toes, feet, legs, or in the digits, upper limb digits. Venous ulcers are usually seen on the medial aspect of the lower limb. They are due to venous incompetence, either due to varicose ulcers, varicose veins, or they are due to deep vein thrombosis. Then you come to trophic ulcer, pressure sore or decubitus ulcer. Pressure sore, the bed sore, what we call bed sore in the hospital. They have punched out edges with slough on the floor. Bed sores and perforating ulcers, they develop as a result of prolonged pressure. Usually they are seen over the sacrum if the patient is not being cared for very adequately, because patients who can't move on their own should be nursed on their sides, and also they are given the air-water mattress. The other sides are ischial tuberosity, the heel, malleolus, and occiput, depending upon whether patient is moving around. Next. Tropical ulcers are seen in Africa, India, South America because of trauma, insect bites. Next. Diabetic ulcer, I've already told you the causes. Next one. Specific, because of tuberculosis, syphilis, we don't see much now. Tuberculosis, we get plenty of them. Actinomycosis, Melanese ulcer, and soft sore. These are the specific ulcers. Next. Then malignant, you have squamous cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, rodent ulcer, and malignant melanoma. Next one. Examination, inspection, palpation, examination of lymph nodes, vascular insufficiency, and nerve lesions. This is how you complete the examination of an ulcer after your general examination is over. Next one. Inspection: location, size, shape, floor, edge, discharge, surrounding area. Palpation: you check for tenderness, local rise of temperature, bleeding on touch, consistency of the surrounding area, edge of the ulcer, and edema and mobility. Regional lymph nodes have to be checked. Sensations of the limb. Pulsations are very important. Our peripheral arterial pulsations have to be checked in every case of ulceration. You must know which are the sites you have to check. Your carotid artery, then radial artery, then the brachial artery, axillary. You must know how to palpate. What the students normally do, they put even the dorsalis pedis, femoral, they put their hand on the whole foot and they start looking for the pulsation of the artery. This method will not work if patient is having absent pulsations or weak pulsations. So you must learn from your clinical textbooks which is the best way of feeling for a particular pulsation, and write in your case history the pulsation chart, the name of the artery and the right side and the left side, whether it's normal, whether it's absent, whether it's below normal. This should be mentioned on that. Functions of the joint and the systemic examination. Next. Inspection, of course, location, floor of the ulcer. Floor of the ulcer is what you see with your eye. Discharge from the ulcer is also seen. Edge. There is a difference between the edge of an ulcer and the margin of an ulcer. Margin of the ulcer is the margin between the normal epithelium and the ulcer. Edge is the junction between the floor and the margin. And you have to check the surrounding area. Now, location of the ulcer, arterial ulcer are usually tips of the toes, dorsum of the foot. Venous ulcers are medial side of the leg. And short saphenous varicosities with ulcer, you should come on the lateral side of the leg. Then perforating ulcers are over the sole, are seen on the sole at pressure points. And non-healing ulcers are over the shin, the tibia, the subcutaneous part. See, many times the diabetics, because of neuropathy, they have loss of sensation and they do not realize when there is a wound on the sole of the foot. And this is how it starts the diabetic foot. Next. They come when it has become quite bad. Even a small shoe bite progresses very rapidly in a diabetic in a day. Then you get red granulation tissue in healing ulcer, necrotic tissue or slough in spreading ulcer, pale scanty granulation tissue in tuberculous ulcer, and washed leather slough in gummatous ulcer. We don't see much of gummatous ulcers here because they come for treatment quite early. Serous discharge from the ulcer is very important. Serous discharge is a light pinkish red discharge, healing ulcer. Purulent pus is spreading ulcer. Bloody discharge comes from a malignant ulcer. Discharge with bony spicules is in osteomyelitis, and green discharge is seen in Pseudomonas infection. Next. Edge. This is between the floor and the margin. These two parts represent areas of maximum activity. There is stage of extension, stage of transition, and stage of repair in an ulcer. This is what you see in the edge. Now you come to the different types of edges. This is the sloping edge, which you will see. You see in the figure A on the chrome picture. It is sloping. This is seen in healing ulcers and in venous ulcers. The typical ulcers. Next. Punched out edge in trophic ulcers and gummatous ulcers. Next. Undermined edge, very important. This is the picture in a tuberculous ulcer. Raised beaded edge. This is rodent ulcer or basal cell carcinoma, very important. Next one. Everted edge rolled out squamous cell carcinoma. This is the squamous cell carcinoma. Next. Surrounding area. Whether it's thick and pigmented like you get in an area with venous ulcer, whether it's thin and dark in an arterial ulcer, or whether it's red and edematous in spreading ulcers like diabetic foot ulcers. Next. In palpation, the base is always palpated. Edge, you can see the edge also and you can palpate it. Base is a finding of palpation. You can check for the mobility, bleeding, and surrounding area. Induration of the edge is very characteristic in the squamous cell carcinoma. Its tenderness of the edge is characteristic of infective ulcers and also arterial ulcers. Base is the area on which the ulcer rests. These are all questions you'll be asked not only in the exams, you'll be asked in your viva. So you should know what is the difference between base and floor. Students get confused. What is the difference between edge of an ulcer and margin of an ulcer? You have to know this very correctly. Marked induration at the base is diagnostic of squamous cell carcinoma. Induration, we've already done this. No, maximum induration, squamous cell. Also, minimum you get in malignant melanoma. It's not very common. Brawny induration in an abscess. That's all. Next. Mobility, whether the ulcer is mobile. Malignant, an ulcer which is fixed to the underlying structures will not be mobile. Next. Malignant ulcer is friable. It's a growth. On gentle palpation, it bleeds. It's a cauliflower-shaped swelling. Granulation tissue is in a healing ulcer. Granulation tissue in a healing ulcer also causes bleeding if you touch it. So, surrounding area, thickening and induration and tenderness and pitting on pressure. That is edema, which indicates spreading inflammation. Then you have to palpate the regional lymph nodes. Tender and enlarged in acute secondary infection, non-tender and enlarged in chronic infection, and non-tender and hard in squamous cell carcinoma, non-tender, large and firm. It's very important in surgery to examine the draining lymph nodes for any lesion. And if your case itself is a lymph node enlargement, you have to examine the draining areas. Next. Now you have to do the complete blood picture. Urine and blood examination must be done to rule out diabetes mellitus. Chest X-ray to rule out tuberculosis. Pus for culture and sensitivity. See, before you start dressing, you should send pus for culture and sensitivity. And you have to, we don't have to always do an angiography. We can do a Doppler in the first place. Angiography is an invasive investigation. It is done before you do any surgery on arteries. X-ray of the part, you have to check for osteomyelitis. Very important in trauma patients, in patients who have had fractures and who have been operated for fractures, and biopsy in non-healing and malignant ulcers. Treatment of the cause is very important. You have to correct the deficiencies, control pain, control infection with relevant antibiotics. You have to debride the wound. Debride the wound every time when you take the patient for dressing. All the dead tissue is removed and then the patient is dressed. Sometimes in diabetes patients, you may have to do the dressing more than once a day. And last, when the ulcer has converted from a non-healing ulcer to a healing ulcer, you either allow it to heal. If it's a small ulcer and the scarring will not be a problem, otherwise you'll have to go for a plastic surgery procedure like skin grafting. Treatment of each types of ulcers, always the same. You have to treat the underlying cause. The non-healing ulcers start becoming healing ulcers. Same thing, you have to treat spreading ulcers. That means infected ulcers with, you send it for pus culture and sensitivity and give antibiotics. You start the antibiotics after you've sent the discharge for pus culture and sensitivity. You use hydrogen peroxide and Usol. Usol is Edinburgh University solution, hypochlorite solution for treating the slough. And excessive granulation tissue, which is commonly called proud flesh, is excised, or we use copper sulfate to dress. And repeated dressings are carried out. Next. After that, you have to change to, if it has started coming, if it has converted into a healing ulcer, then you have to take a decision whether this patient can continue with dressings and the ulcer can heal on its own, or you have to take the patient for closure by some method of plastic surgery like skin grafting or flap or any of those things. chronic ulcers do not respond usually to conventional methods, but if they do sometimes come round, because many of the chronic ulcers, the cause has not been deciphered. If you can decipher the cause and treat the cause, like if there is osteomyelitis or if there is a foreign body in the tissues, then the ulcer will start healing and become a healing ulcer. Next one. First. Now we come to sinus and fistula. Yes. Now the next topic for me is sinus and fistula. So I have a number of small topics. Sinus is a blind track leading from the surface of the body down into the tissues, either the external surface or the internal surface. It is lined with granulation tissue. You have many types of sinuses. Congenital sinus, like the one which is near which is the pre-auricular sinus. Then acquired sinus, median mental sinus, which is near the symphysis menti, the chin. Pyloneal sinus occurs in the midline close to the anal region. Osteomyelitis sinus, due to osteomyelitis, gives rise to sinus discharging pus with or without bony spicules. Bony spicules may not be always coming out. You may see it in the wound. Commonest sinus in the neck is due to tubercular lymphadenitis. It discharges cheesy material. Skin surrounding the sinus shows bluish discoloration. This is the tuberculous. This is about sinus. Sinus is a single opening which is present on the epithelial surface. Next one. Now we come to fistula. Fistula is an abnormal communication between one epithelial surface to the other. It can be from one organ to the other, or it can be from the lumen of one organ, and it can communicate with the external body surface. There are different types of fistulae. Examples of internal fistulae, tracheoesophageal fistula, which is seen in babies who are born with a problem also, and it is also seen in people who have malignancies, where ulceration takes place and there's a tracheoesophageal fistula. You have a colovesical fistula. Examples of external fistula. See, when the fistula is communicating with the external surface of the body, are orocutaneous fistula due to carcinoma of oral cavity infiltrating the skin, like if there is a carcinoma of the cheek. Branchial fistula is also present. Thyroglossal fistula. Thyroglossal fistula is seen in the neck. When there is a thyroglossal cyst and a doctor or supposed to be doctor has not treated the cyst properly and thought it to be an abscess, inadequately excised, it results in a thyroglossal fistula. Causes of persistence of a sinus or fistula: presence of a foreign body or presence of foreign bodies. Sometimes we get presence of a stitch in a sinus, persistent infection, distal obstruction. See, when we have done an anastomosis and distally there is obstruction in the gut, then the anastomosis will open up. Absence of rest, epithelialization of the tract. If the tract gets a layer of epithelium over it, it will not heal. Then in malignancies and in non-dependent drainage. Next. How do you examine a sinus or a fistula? You have to see where it is located. Branchial fistula is usually anterior border of the lower third of sternomastoid. This is very important because it's quite rare in the OPDs, but if it comes in a then you have the parotid fistula and the parotid region. Thyroglossal fistula, you can get an appendicular fistula, fecal fistula, and right iliac fossa. Sinuses, you can get pre-auricular sinus, front of the root of helix of ear due to failure of fusion of the tubercles, and then the direction is upwards and backwards. Then you have median mental sinus, which is in the symphysis menti, tuberculous sinus in the neck, lymphogranuloma in the groin. Number, it can be single or multiple. Opening, it may be showing sprouting granulation tissue or foreign body. It may be flush with the skin only if it's a tuberculous sinus. Yellowish and purulent if there is staphylococcal infection. Also, if it's a fecal fistula, you have to be very careful, because in a fecal fistula, if an appendix after surgery or an appendix stump blows up, or if an anastomosis has opened up, there will be excoriation of the skin all around the fistulous opening. So the surrounding skin will look very, there will be excoriation of skin, there will be pigmentation if it's a chronic sinus, and it will be red and angry looking if it's inflammatory. Palpation is just to palpate the outside opening of the sinus or fistula. Next. Treatment. Yeah. Treatment is, you have to treat the cause. Whatever is the cause has to be treated. Control of tuberculosis, and then only you can do surgery on the patient if patient is tuberculous. Removal of foreign body, very important. If you don't remove a stitch which is lying in the sinus, it will go on discharging, it will never heal. And once primary disease is controlled, the full sinus or fistula tract has to be excised. Next. Which is the next one? Cyst. Which is next you show me. Cyst. My next topic is cyst. So we all know what is the, I hope you know what is the definition of a cyst. A cyst is a swelling which is a cavity lined by epithelium and it contains fluid. Very important. There are two cysts which are asked in your exams. And one is the dermoid cyst. It is a cyst lined by squamous epithelium containing desquamated cells. The contents are thick and sometimes toothpaste-like, which is a mixture of sweat, sebum, and desquamated epithelial cells, and sometimes even hair is present there. Clinical types of dermoid cyst: congenital or sequestration dermoid. They occur along the lines of embryonic fusion due to dermal cells being buried in. When the lines of embryonic fusion join together, dermal cells are buried in the deeper plane. The cells which are sequestrated in the subcutaneous plane proliferate and liquefy to form a cyst. As it grows, it indents the mesoderm, which explains the bony defects caused by dermoid cyst in the skull. Whenever we have cysts near the orbit or on the face, cranium or into the bone, they perforate the bone also. Not always, but whenever you have a dermoid cyst, you have to check the bone, underlying bone. They can occur anywhere in the midline of the body. Median nasal dermoid cyst at the root of the nose, which is at the fusion lines of frontal process. External and internal angular dermoid at the fusion frontal and sternum space of Burns, the sternum, sublingual dermoid cyst below the tongue, pre-auricular dermoid cyst in front of the ear, auricle dermoid cyst behind the auricle. I'll show you a pic of that. Pinna is formed as tubercles. Both 5 and 6 occur because of failure of fusion of one of the tubercles, which the other, if the one tubercle does not fuse with the other, they form, you get what is pre-auricular, post-auricular dermoid. Next. Picture connection. Where is the picture? Dermoid picture. This is the post-auricular dermoid, which you can see. Following sharp injury, few epidermal cells got implanted into the subcutaneous plane and they developed into an implantation dermoid cyst. Hence, it is typically found in fingers, palm, and sole of the foot. These are the places where there can be an injury and the epithelial surface can go inside. And it forms a cyst later on. Treatment of unstable internet. It's okay. The next one is excision of the cyst. Okay, the treatment of a dermoid is always excision of the cyst. Come to sebaceous. Sebaceous cyst, very frequently coming in your paper. This is also called an epidermoid cyst. This occurs due to obstruction to one of the sebaceous ducts, resulting in accumulation of sebaceous material. This example of retention cyst. Side scalp, face, back scrotum. It does not occur in the palm and sole where sebaceous glands are absent, but it occurs in multiple numbers in the scalp and scrotum because the sebaceous glands are found. They are slow growing. They appear in early adulthood or middle age. They are hemispherical or spherical swelling located in the dermis. The central keratin-filled punctum, which is a dark spot, is diagnostic feature of the cyst. I'll just show you the picture. The punctum indicates blockage of the duct. Smooth surface, round borders, soft and putty in consistency, and it's non-tender. Cyst can be molded into different shapes, which is described as sign of molding. I'll show you the pic of this is the sebaceous cyst. And treatment of sebaceous cyst, you can take it's done, both are done under local anesthesia, but in dermoid cyst, you have to first find out whether there is any intracranial extension, and then you have to excise it. You have to excise the cyst complete in toto. Both can be excised in toto. In the case of sebaceous cyst, sometimes you take an incision and you can avulse the cyst. Now we come to the complications of a sebaceous cyst. Infection can occur due to injury or scratch resulting in an abscess. The cyst gets infected. The cyst will be tender, red, and hot. It should be treated like an abscess by incision and drainage. After 1 or 2 months, the cyst can be excised. Sebaceous horn results due to slow drying of the contents, which are squeezed out, especially if a patient does not wash the part. Thus, it is not uncommon to find a large sebaceous horn nowadays because of it's very uncommon nowadays because we find better ways of living and sanitation. Calcification may be present. Pox peculiar tumor, it's an infected ulcerated cyst of the scalp with pouting granulation tissue, and occasionally a malignancy may develop in the sebaceous cyst. These are the complications. Treatment is incision and avulsion, or the other one is you excise the full cyst. Dermoid cyst is always excised in toto. There is no incision and avulsion. Next topic. Which is it? Hodgkin's disease. One of my topics is also the lymphatic system. So I thought I'll take one topic which comes very frequently in your paper. Next one. 1 minute. Yeah. This is the Hodgkin's lymphoma, and what you're seeing is the Reed-Sternberg cell. The nucleus is the owl eye nucleus which is present. So the owl is also shown next, so you can see it. Next one. Hodgkin's lymphoma is normally seen in a localized single axial group of lymph nodes. More frequent involvement of peripheral nodes, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We are not going to do non-Hodgkin's lymphoma today, only Hodgkin's lymphoma. Orderly spread by contiguity. In non-Hodgkin's, it's a non-contiguous spread. Mesenteric lymph nodes and Waldeur's ring are rarely involved. Waldeur's ring is present in the oral cavity. Adenoids, tonsils, and you have the lingual tonsil. And you have extranodal involvement, like the spleen and the liver is extranodal involvement. Next one. This is how it can spread, contiguous and diffuse. Next. Painless enlargement of lymph nodes is the common presenting symptom. It's associated with fever, Bell-Epstein fever, and night sweats in disseminated disease. Weight loss can go over less than 10% of body weight. And sometimes there is a paraneoplastic syndrome in Hodgkin's lymphoma. There's pain in the affected lymph nodes. Next. Unusual manifestations are also present: severe itching, cutaneous disorders such as erythema nodosum and ichthyosis from atrophy, nephrotic syndrome. These are all the uncommon manifestations. Next one. Next. Next. The lymph nodes of Hodgkin's disease are rubbery in consistency and they are discrete. So you can always diagnose them. Tuberculous lymph nodes are matted. Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now we come to the Ann Arbor staging. This is the staging which is always asked in the exams. It is so simple, but still the students don't write it properly. Stage 1. It's called clinical staging. Involvement of single lymph node region or single extra lymphatic site on any side of the diaphragm. Stage 2, involvement of 2 or more lymph node regions on same side of diaphragm, may include localized extra lymphatic tissue. Stage 3, involvement of lymph node regions on both sides of the diaphragm, which may include spleen, or it may be localized. And stage 4 is diffuse extra lymphatic disease. It may be in the liver, bone marrow, lung, or skin. Next one. Patients with localized disease are cured 90% of time. They have a good prognostic factors. Extended field radiotherapy also has a high cure rate. Patients with more extensive disease or those with B symptoms receive a complete course of chemotherapy. Next. Chemotherapy regimens used in Hodgkin's. You have ABVD regimen or the MOP regimen. You have to mention the regimens in your answer paper when the question is asked. Adriamycin, chlorothamine, that is the bleomycin, vinblastine, dacarbazine. This is the one we commonly use. MOP is also used. And in MOP, the second P is the steroid, prednisone. Most patients receive ABVD, but a weekly chemotherapy regimen administered for 12 weeks called Stanford 5 is becoming very popular. Patients who relapse after primary chemotherapy can frequently still be cured. It's a good prognosis in this. There are other serious side effects of this disease like acute leukemias, secondary malignancies in the lung and the breast, coronary artery disease, hypothyroidism, and infertility. Next. Suspicious you have to check for Hodgkin's disease if patient has infectious mononucleosis, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, phenytoin-induced adenopathy, and non-lymphomatous malignancies. This is over. Now there are 2 topics. Yeah. Next one.
Topics: cancer.
Cancer of the tongue. Cheek. Cancer of the tongue, and I have CA cheek for you. They are very short topics. I'm not taking it very long, so don't worry. Because cancer of the tongue is repeatedly coming as an LAQ in the paper. And it's very important for you. Cancer cheek comes generally as a short note. But I feel you should know it also because primarily you're all dental students. So you should know the malignancies in the oral cavity. Next one. It's divided, the tongue is divided into anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3. Only anterior 2/3 is the visible part. Posterior 1/3 we usually palpate. Sulcus terminalis, V-shaped area that separates both. It's lined by larger papillae just anterior to the sulcus. On the midline is the foramen cecum, where the thyroid develops from and then during development reaches the neck. The thyroid descends into the neck. Next one. Muscles of the tongue. Muscles of the tongue, we have extrinsic muscles and intrinsic muscles. You know the intrinsic muscles, super and inferior longitudinal, transverse and vertical. Extrinsic muscles are genioglossus, hyoglossus, styloglossus, and palatoglossus. The next one. Next one. This is just to show the pictures. Next. Lymphatic drainage, very important in the tongue. Tip of the tongue drains bilaterally to the submental nodes. Right and left halves of anterior two-thirds drain respectively to the submandibular lymph nodes. Centrally located region drains bilaterally to deep cervical lymph nodes. It can drain to either side. So that is the problem when you're managing a case of CA tongue. Posterior one-third drains to upper deep cervical bilaterally. Again, jugulodigastric. The whole network then finally drains into the jugulo-omohyoid. Lymphatic drainage is very important. Next. Blood supply. Arterial supply is the lingual artery, branch of external artery. Root of tongue is supplied by tonsillar artery, branch of facial artery, and ascending pharyngeal branch of external carotid. Venous supply, veni comitans accompanying lingual artery and hypoglossal nerve, and deep lingual nerve is also known. It unites posteriorly to form the lingual vein, which drains into the internal jugular. All muscles except palatoglossus is supplied by hypoglossal nerve. That is your 12th cranial nerve. Palatoglossus is supplied by the 11th accessory nerve. Sensory supply, this is the motor supply. Sensory supply, lingual nerve has general sensation. Chorda tympani, taste sensation for anterior two-thirds. Glossopharyngeal nerve, both general sensation and taste of posterior one-third. And vagus is posterior most part of the tongue through the internal laryngeal nerve. This is the diagrammatic representation of the motor nerves. On this side, on the left side, you have the sensory nerve supply, and on the other side, you have the motor nerves, which is supplying what I just told you. Next. Next. Risk factors for carcinoma tongue are smoking and tobacco-related products. Smoking is very bad. Even pipe smoking, reverse smoke, all kinds of smoking is there. Then you have the S's, spirits, alcohol, sepsis, sharp tooth, spicy food, then virus infections, and Plummer-Vinson syndrome because of low hemoglobin. Next one. Anatomy of the oropharynx. No, this we don't need. Malignancies of the oral cavity are squamous cell carcinoma, most common. Chronic exposure to carcinogens causes dysplasia, multiple sites of subclinical malignant sites, and you have adenocarcinoma, which arise from minor salivary glands, and the lymphoma, which occurs on the posterior most part of the tongue. Next. Pre-malignant lesions are the high-risk lesions. You have the erythroplakia, chronic hyperplastic candidiasis, oral submucous fibrosis, syphilitic glossitis, sideropenic dysphagia, that is the Patterson-Kelly syndrome, which is seen in women. Then you have oral lichen planus and discoid lupus and discoid keratosis. Next one. Leukoplakia, defined as any white patch or plaque that cannot be characterized clinically or pathologically, varies from a well-circumscribed lesion to extensive lesion involving large areas. Speckle leukoplakia, variant of leukoplakia, see the second picture, arising from an erythematous base. Higher incidence of malignant transformation. Next one. Pre-malignant lesions, erythroplakia. See, you can see a patch of erythroplakia, which is a pre-malignant lesion. It can develop into malignancy. The lesions are irregular in outline and separated from normal mucosa. Next one. Chronic hyperplastic candidiasis. I don't have a pic for this. It produces dense plaques of leukoplakia, high incidence of malignant transformation, believed to be invasion of Candida albicans, sometimes associated with those who are suffering from immunodeficiency. Patients on steroids, diabetic patients, patients with HIV, and patients who have undergone transplantation, because they are on medicines to suppress the RX. Prolonged antifungals, either topical or systemic. Next. Oral submucous fibrosis, another one which is a pre-malignant condition. Next one. Next. Sideropenic dysplasia, Plummer-Vinson syndrome or Patterson-Kelly syndrome, well-known relationship between the condition and oral cancers. It's common in some women, leads to epithelial atrophy, mucosa vulnerable to carcinogens leading to malignancy. Next one. Painless, now clinical features of CA tongue. Painless long-standing ulcer, later becomes painful due to infection or nerve involvement, readily bleeds on touch, induration present more than the ulcer area. When you palpate the tongue ulcer, the induration will be larger than the area of the ulcer. The edge may be raised or everted, like all malignant ulcers. There is excessive salivation, dysphagia due to fixation of tongue by involvement of genioglossus or due to posterior third growth, halitosis, foul smell, change in voice, very important, neck nodes, and aspiration leading to bronchopneumonia. It's very dangerous, this condition. So you come to the classification of this tumor. When you don't have any information of primary tumor, it's TX. T0 is no evidence of primary tumor. In the head and in the neck, you can get secondary tumor may show evidence before you can notice the primary. T small is carcinoma in situ. T1 is tumor less than 2 centimeters in diameter. T2 is tumor 2 to 4 centimeters in diameter. T3 is tumor greater than 4 centimeters. T4 is tumor invades adjacent structures. Next one. Nodes. Same thing, no? NX nodes are not assessed. N0, no palpable nodes. Ipsilateral nodes, 3 centimeters or less is N1. That ipsilateral means same side. Contralateral or bilateral nodes, 3 to 6 centimeters in diameter. Then again, it's divided into N2A, N2B, and N2C categories, depending on the presence of other symptoms. N3, fixed palpable nodes greater than 6 centimeters in diameter. Metastasis, only MX and no metastasis M0, and clinical or radiographic evidence of metastasis in M1. Next. Now stage 1 is T1, N0, M0. Stage 2 is T2. Stage 3 is T3 or T1, T2 or T3 along with N1. That is also stage 3. Stage 4 is stage 4A. All the combinations are there, T4A, N0 or N1, M0, T1, T2, T3 or T4 with N2. Then any T and N3, MO. So, you know, the stages keep advancing. They are important to know which modality of treatment we select. Next. Patients present with an ulcer, always go for an edge biopsy. You biopsy the edge of an ulcer along with the normal tissue. If neck nodes are palpable and enlarged, do and fine needle aspiration cytology. Indirect laryngoscopy is necessary for posterior lesions. CT or MRI is necessary for the extent of the lesion. Nowadays, we get the scanning done for that, and you have to do a chest X-ray to rule out bronchopneumonia. Next. Next. Now we come to the treatment of ulcer tongue. Students get confused with the different words, so we'll just go through all that. This is not the one. Okay. The cheek. So one and see. Now this is the one. First one is not this. First one is different. Okay. Show me only the lower one. This page is only lower one. This one? Not this. The other picture. First picture. This one. Come to treatment. Okay. Bring it down to treatment. No, down. Bring this down. Down, still down. We know how the carcinoma of tongue spreads. It has got local spread. It spreads through the lymphatics, which is very important, and blood spread is very rare, but it occurs very late. Investigations we have already covered. Now we come for treatment of carcinoma of the tongue, the same as that of any other carcinoma in the oral cavity. The treatment modalities are surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy. Next one. Surgery come down. Various types of surgeries indicated in cases of carcinoma of tongue are as follows. Wide local excision means wide excision with 1 centimeter margin and a depth of 1 centimeter is sufficient. Next one. Next slide. Go up. That one, partial gloss. The other one is partial glossectomy. It is indicated when the lesion is less than 2 centimeters and confined to the lateral border of the tongue. About 1/3 of the anterior 2/3 of the tongue can be removed. Wide excision should include at least 2 centimeters of tissue away from the palpable indurated edge of the tumor. Then you come to the third operation, which is hemiglossectomy. Hemiglossectomy is removal of half of the anterior 2/3 of tongue and it is reconstructed. This is indicated in a radioresidual tumor, radiorecurrent tumor, or where radiotherapy facilities are not available. The reconstruction of the tongue can be done by using a pectoralis major myocutaneous flap. The last one is a total glossectomy, which is done for very extensive growths involving the entire tongue and are given radiotherapy initially sometimes to reduce the size of the tumor. Surgery can then be undertaken. The final decision is always with the surgeon. You can excise it completely, and total glossectomy carries significant mortality and morbidity. Next. This is treatment of the carcinoma of the tongue. Then we come to the commando operation. This is indicated when carcinoma of tongue is fixed to the mandible with infiltration of the floor of the mouth. Hemiglossectomy with hemimandibulectomy and removal of the floor of the mouth and radical neck dissection is known as commando's operation. So choice of operation depends on the tumor size and the type of tumor and whether the edges are free of tumor. Early growth, wide excision. More than 2 centimeters, hemiglossectomy. Larger primary tumor, you go for, first you can give radiotherapy and later hemiglossectomy, or go for hemiglossectomy and then see if you can get a 2 centimeter margin around it. Bilateral mobile lymph nodes are dealt with, one side radical block dissection and other side functional block dissection, retaining the internal jugular vein to maintain cerebral venous blood flow. The other option is same side radical neck dissection and opposite side suprahyoid block dissection. You know the different modalities of treatment you should know. Wide excision is also done when the growth is in the tip of the tongue. Posterior third growths can be approached by lip split and mandible resection so as to halt total glossectomy. And mandible is involved, hemimandibulectomy is done. If only the inner table, the advances in treatment, if only the inner table of the mandible is involved, you can remove only that. This gives you less morbidity. But in no way should you compromise the resection of a malignant tumor. The malignant tumor must be excised properly so that the recurrence is averted. The procedure that involves wide excision or hemiglossectomy, hemimandibulectomy, and radical neck dissection together is called as commando operation. Yes. Then we come to chemotherapy, which is when the tumor is very large, and radiation therapy. Radiation therapy is given as a second line of treatment if necessary, because radiation therapy also damages the mandible to a large extent. And if it's become a systemic disease, then we go for chemotherapy. If you give 50 milligrams per kilogram per day for 5 days, it reduces the size of the tumor. Treatment of secondary lymph nodes, prophylactic block dissection, even though the lymph nodes are not palpable. Some people go for, there are many modalities of treatment, prophylactic supraomohyoid block dissection, and prognosis is better, that is what is reported. However, you can wait for the appearance of the lymph nodes and then block dissection is done. Because these are very major surgeries with a lot of morbidity. When the lymph nodes are enlarged along with the carcinoma of tongue, En bloc radical neck dissection is done at the time of resection of the tongue, floor of the mouth and mandible. That is your commando operation. When the glands are fixed and inoperable, palliative radiation and chemotherapy is tried, although the glands are resistant. Glands do not respond to it. The mode of death in carcinoma of tongue is always due to cachexia and starvation because patient is not able to eat well. Then aspiration, bronchopneumonia, hemorrhage from the growth or glands. This is a very dangerous complication which occurs, and asphyxia due to edema and compression of the larynx. This is usually seen in patients who are having very advanced malignancies in oncology units. Next, CG. Carcinoma of the cheek is another very common topic which is asked in the paper, and it's usually asked as an SAQ, short answer questions. Carcinoma of the cheek is very common in India due to the habit of keeping the tobacco quid in the cheek pouch. If they present either as a non-healing ulcer with slough in the center of the lesion, an exophytic growth, that is a cauliflower-shaped growth, or a proliferative growth, verrucous carcinoma, or an infiltrative lesion slowly involving the adjacent structures like tongue, mandible, floor of the mouth, skin, etc. Clinical features, it may be a non-healing ulcer or a cauliflower-like growth. It's an exophytic growth. The edges of the ulcer may be everted, sorry, not inverted. They are always everted. All malignant tumors, the edges are everted. Next. Induration also clinically presents when you palpate it with a gloved finger. The surrounding area will be indurated. There is, evidence of leukoplakia may be present in the oral cavity. Trismus is present because pterygoid muscles are involved and masseter. Then when carcinoma cheek extends into the retromolar place also, you get trismus. Trismus can also be due to soft tissue fibrosis caused by radiation. Generally, we do not give radiation before. It's a very accessible malignancy. Assessment of fixity to mandible must be checked, and you have to bidigitally palpate the mandible. Peculiarities of the verrucous carcinoma, it's very slow growing. Growth is exophytic or cauliflower shape, rarely spreads by lymphatics, well differentiated. That means slow growing carcinoma, and surgery is the treatment of choice. For carcinoma cheek, it is always, and for tongue. Clinical features, exophytic growth is non-healing ulcer, whatever it is. It has everted edges, slough on the floor, bleeds on touch, induration at the edge and base, surrounding area, fixity to the structures and hard regional lymph nodes. Spread can be localized. Spread can be localized. It can be due to the it can spread through the lymphatic submandibular nodes, and upper deep cervical nodes get enlarged. Okay, or you can have blood spread, which is very rare and it occurs late. Wedge biopsy from the edge of the ulcer is taken because of the following reasons. Tumor cells in malignancy are concentrated more in the growing edge. That's why we get that everted edge. Comparison with normal tissue is always possible, and center has got slough. Next slide. And the X-ray. OPG is always done. Treatment. A small superficial ulcer, T1, T2, is treated by wide excision followed by a split skin graft. A small infiltrative ulcer is treated by wide excision followed by a flap reconstruction. This is the better alternative because when we go wide local excision, we should remember that the depth also should be removed. People forget about the depth. All around we remember, but the depth should be taken into consideration also. And reconstruction is done. In males, a forehead flap based on anterior branch of superficial temporal artery is used to close the defect. And the flap is raised, incision made above zygoma, flap is brought inside the cheek and sutured to the cheek mucosa. After 3 to 4 weeks, the proximal portion of flap is returned to its original place after dividing it. It is called as return of the flap. In females, we use the deltopectoral flap, which is based on the perforating branches of the internal mammary artery, which gives better cosmetic appearance. Both these flaps have been replaced now by the PMMC, that is pectoralis major myocutaneous flap. This is the most widely used flap now for head and neck reconstruction. Flap is raised along with muscle and an island of skin based on pectoral branch of thoracoacromial artery. It is tunneled under the skin of chest wall and neck and brought to the area of the defect. Also, there have been a lot of advances in microvascular surgery. So getting flaps from different places has made it possible to reconstruct very effectively after head and neck surgery. This is not for this session. We can study it sometime later. Next. What about the tumors? There's only one very small topic left, that is about on tumors, which shows basically the difference between the abnormal. Neoplasm is an abnormal growth of tissue, also known as a tumor. Neoplasm means new growth. Next. Benign. Behavior on biological classification. Benign is a slow-growing, self-contained tumor that is not seriously harmful. Malignant tumor, usually fast-growing, often fatal tumor that invades surrounding tissue and sheds cell. Why I've selected this topic? I was given the topic of tumor also, but the question which is asked from here is always differentiate between benign and malignant neoplasms. The commonest question which is given. Next. It has not come for a long time recently. Take out this.
It is paused.
Okay. The cell characteristics.
Yeah, I've started.
Cell characteristics in benign. Stop sharing.
No, I have not stopped.
You showed this.
No, I'm not sure.
Benign is well differentiated cells that resemble normal cells of the tissue from which the tumor has arisen. Malignant cells are undifferentiated, or they are even called de-differentiated, and often bear little resemblance to the normal cells of the tissue from which they arise. Next one.
Okay, I'll stop this. Shall I stop?
No. Now you come to the next one, the mode of growth. Benign tumors, tumor grows by expansion and does not infiltrate the surrounding tissues. It is usually encapsulated. Malignant tumor grows at the periphery and sends out processes that infiltrate and destroy the surrounding tissue. Next. Stop sharing. This is how the benign tumor expands, and this is how. And it's got a capsule, and see the malignant tissue, it infiltrates. Next. Benign growth and malignant. See how it spreads. Normal, it goes into the normal tissues, the malignant tissue, and benign growth grows very systematically. Next. Rate of growth is usually slow in benign tumors. Malignant, the rate of growth is variable. Usually it depends on the level of differentiation. The more anaplastic the tumor, the faster its growth. Next. Benign does not metastasize. It doesn't go to other organs. Malignant gains access to blood and lymphatic channels and metastasizes to other areas of the body. This is one of the most important differences. Benign tumor cells grow only locally. Benign tumor cells grow only locally and cannot spread by invasion or metastasis. Malignant cancer cells invade neighboring tissues, enter blood vessels and lymphatics, and metastasize to different sites. They go to different sites, metastasize. General effect. Benign is usually a localized phenomenon that does not cause generalized effects, but it can cause pressure effects if it's very big, unless its location interferes with vital functions. Malignant often causes generalized effects such as anemia, weakness, and weight loss. Tissue destruction. Benign does not usually cause tissue damage unless its location interferes with blood flow. Malignant often causes tissue damage as the tumor outgrows its blood supply or encroaches on blood supply to the area. It may also produce substances that cause cell damage. This is malignant tumor. Benign can only cause problems because of its size or its location. Benign does not usually cause death unless its location interferes with vital functions. Malignant usually causes death unless growth of the tumor can be controlled. Next. Benign tumors also cause a lot of morbidity and mortality because of their position and because of their size. And malignant, of course, it causes much more because of the malignant nature of the tumor. All benign tumors are well encapsulated. Yeah. Benign tumors are very well encapsulated and they do not cause any other problem. But there are some benign tumors also which are not encapsulated, like you get in the lipoma. You do get other tumors also, but they are not dangerous to the patient. The malignant tumors are very dangerous because of their ability to spread and because of their potential to grow to very big sizes and secrete abnormal enzymes and hormones. Also, the treatment of benign tumors is very simple. We have to just excise the tumor. That's all the treatment. In the case of malignant tumor, you have to maintain the margin which is clear of tumor cells and also dissect the draining lymph nodes. And there may be also secondaries in other organs which have to be taken care of. With that, I finish all my topics. I cannot take more than that because